Welcome everybody to our BNI Talks webinar. This week, our topic is Chapter Traffic Light Secrets Exposed. It's a very fancy title. With Torrey Moreno. Torrey's been on the webinar. He was on a couple months back talking about website landing pages, which you can find on BNI Business Builder or our BNI Team USA YouTube channel. So Torrey, why don't you do a quick intro?
Yeah, hi, my name is Torrey. I'm the president of the Seattle Professionals BNI chapter, and I own a business called Mindful Web Design, and I create websites and I do digital marketing for local small businesses here in Seattle, and I've started branching out across the country. So love to have a chat if you're interested in that, separate from this talk. But I am excited to talk today about how to improve chapters. That was something that the leadership team and myself was really excited about this last year, and we put a lot of energy into. So I'm happy to share some ideas and some of the things that we saw improve the chapter.
Yeah, and the results have shown themselves because this talk came about because your managing director had mentioned that your chapter had scored a perfect score for 3 months in a row in chapter traffic lights, which is kind of unheard of. It is a rare thing. There are some chapters that do it, but it's not very often at all, because there is a completely different set of metrics. And so today we'll get into the all the secrets around chapter traffic lights, which, by the way, while this is a fun graphic, the truth is there's really no secrets. This is just a report that not every region uses. Some do and some don't. And the majority, I believe, do not. And so this is something where you can really look at the health of your chapter as a whole, where we're used to collectively looking at member traffic lights, right? So let's start with member traffic lights, just so that we're clear. So this is something that most regions are aware of. Does every region, is anyone here on this webinar not familiar with the Power of One report? Just out of curiosity. And just throw right into the chat. And in the meantime, while that's happening, okay, looks like most people have seen it. All right, that's good news. Oh, okay, there's someone. Okay, so whether you're a new member or your chapter hasn't used this, this is a report that comes out every month, and it shows the performance of each member. Now, I've taken out the member names, which are to the left of this report, and I'm only showing the scoring. So this shows your overall performance as a member with items that you have control over, right? So whether you're showing up or not, whether you're passing referrals, whether you're bringing visitors, doing one-to-ones, and doing CUs. I've seen this report kind of not as strong as it should be, just because people haven't used the app or BNI Connect to enter their participation. Torrey, I don't know if you've seen this in your own chapter or others, where it's kind of, you know, an easy fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can I add something here?
Sure.
So yeah, with the Power of One, you know, the Power of One, to meet it and stay in the green, you see the green all the way at the top, a score above 80. All you have to do is 1 referral per week, bring 1 visitor per month. It says per week there, but it's technically 1 visitor per month, 1 one-to-one per week, and then 1 CEU per week. So that's why it's called Power One, because you have to meet those 4 things to stay in the green. And so one of the things that I decided to do, I'm a big accountability guy. I hold a lot of value to accountability in my own life, even with like fitness and stuff like that and health. And so one of the things that I changed as soon as I took over was I would show the Power of One, like this thing that you see here before you. I would show this during the meeting, at the end of the meeting, once the guests and the visitors left. I would show this to the chapter and kind of give like a moment of silence and just tell everybody, all right, like look at your name, because usually the score shows the names over on the left as well. Look at your name, see what your score is. You know, we're not singling anybody out, but I just want everybody to be aware of what their own score is. And so that kind of kind of holds everyone to accountability. And if someone's down there in the gray or red, it's like, oh, geez, like I should probably start doing my referrals or, doing my one-to-ones. And so that was one of the things I shifted. And I think that did affect it because it is, it is a little bit embarrassing, but that's kind of like what we were going for. We wanted like the people who were not being active, or maybe they were active, but they just weren't logging it in the BNI Connect app. And so we wanted to get that activity starting to move. And so that was one of the ways that we affected the Power of One.
Yeah, I think, it's a good report to put out there, and it's kind of fluid. I was never, riding across the top at 90 or 100, although I have some friends who do that, and they're awesome. But things happen, things come up. Maybe you had to be away or you were sick or whatever, and you had some absences or whatever was happening. And so it fluctuates. But what's important here is that you're looking at it, and this is, by the way, a 6-month average. And so your goal here is to say, all right, so if I dipped a little bit, what can I do to change that, turn that around, and make sure that I'm doing the best to help the people in my chapter. Maria is asking, I'm the VP of my chapter. Where can I find this report? I will tell you, Maria, you are not the first person to ask that, and that is why I've got another slide for you. This report can be found in the resources section of BNI Business Builder. Log into BNI Business Builder, go to resources, and then in the search box, as you can see right there, put in Power of One, and then whatever region you happen to be in, and then the month and date. Make sure you have the year in there, very important. And you'll see that it will bring up the result. And then notice this, the one that you select, make sure it's got at the bottom, I have the little July 7th, 2021. Make sure it says 2021 because there are reports from previous years as well.
Right? Well, one more thing. I have a good relationship with my support director consultant. His name is Adrian Leontovich here in Seattle, and he's awesome. He gives our chapter a lot of support, and he shows up often. And so if you don't have that kind of close relationship where you're maybe asking him for advice, him or her for advice once in a while, and they're coming to the chapter, maybe giving you some advice, you should establish that with your support director consultant, because I don't know if they have that in every single region, but my support director consultant sends me the report once it's doled out at the beginning of every month. And so that's another way that you could also receive it.
Yeah. And another thing is, if for whatever reason you cannot find your specific region, you can write July Power of One 2021 for BNI USA, and it's going to have every Power of One. It's a gigantic report, but you can find your chapter within it as well. Worst case scenario, right? Okay, so that is the Power of One report for members, for individuals. But this talk today is, oh, by the way, no, Charlene's asking, is that available to, only available to VPs? No, it's available to all members. Okay, so today we're talking about not member traffic lights, but chapter traffic lights. And that is really all about running your chapter like a business, right? I think we all have a responsibility, especially if you're on the leadership team, to make sure that you are doing everything that you can to make your chapter successful. And that's why we've got Torrey on here, because his chapter's done very well. And as the president, you actually kind of mentioned it earlier, Torrey, is that there was always a plan going into the new term to do certain things. Would you say?
That's correct. Yeah. When we took over the new leadership team, and I had an awesome VP and secretary treasurer, and we started the year, well, the fiscal year, back in October, by just kind of meeting weekly before the actual chapter meeting. So our chapter meeting is on Thursday at noon. We'd love all you guys to come visit us. And we would meet Wednesday mornings just to kind of talk about chapter health, especially at the beginning. We didn't keep it the entire year, but especially from the start, we decided that would be best, just to kind of, build some momentum, one, and, two, just have communication between the three of us and make sure that we brought some new ideas to the table. And there were a lot of ideas that we implemented that came from them too. and they were really powerful. And so I think that kind of synergy, like having that kind of energy with your secretary, your treasurer, and VP is really important, and that communication, because it's likely that all three of you have ideas for improvement, but they're not going to get implemented if you just keep them to yourself or try and implement them by yourself. So that was one of the ways. And then yeah, we kind of just started slowly, we didn't do it all at once. We had a lot of ideas in the beginning, but we started slowly kind of trickling them in so we didn't, shock people.
Right, absolutely, because you don't want to, totally turn everything over. You just kind of want to bring things through and do it in a way that is subtle but moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm. And then with the the turnover of the leadership, which is obviously coming up soon here, we kind of, it's, some people think it's kind of nerdy or like drinking the Kool-Aid, but we kind of took the whole, when you get the role and you're assigned to doing all of the training with your local region, like we took that stuff seriously. We showed up and we set goals, and we actually just accomplished our goals. We set the goal of getting to 35 members. We were at 30 at the beginning of the year. And then we also set a goal of 2 million and thank you for closed business. And so we also, kept reminding members throughout the year, like, hey, this is our goals. We're this close. We're this % of the way there. And then we ended up reaching it like 3 months early. So yeah, taking that stuff seriously. It was fun.
Yeah, and especially when you see the results happening from them, right? So there are a couple of questions in the chat that are related to member traffic lights. Let's get them out of the way so we don't confuse the two. For those of you who are looking at your region report and can't find your chapter or don't want to break everything out, if you look at the bottom of the report, you'll see different pages, tabs along the way, and you'll see that eventually your chapter will be broken out individually. So it's already done for you. Okay, so now let's get into chapter traffic lights and what they look like and how they work and all that stuff. So this is the chapter traffic lights report, and you can see at the bottom of the screen, the way to get to it is not in BNI Business Builder, but here in BNI Connect, because this is a general report that you're going to run. So you're just going to go into BNI Connect, go to reports, chapter, and then chapter traffic lights. Those of you who have a bigger number of options, if you're on leadership team or whatever, you may have to scroll down to find it, but you will find that report there. And once you run it, you'll see, you'll choose a date range, and it'll come up with all the chapters in the area. And so for this one, Torrey, since you are in Seattle Professionals, and we wanted to talk about, the fact that you got a great score, but I've got 3 others here in the Kent Networkers, Sound Business Leaders, and Business Bulldogs, all in the Seattle area, and how well they've done. And so we can kind of talk about the different numbers here and see how they've done. But I will tell you, a chapter that scores a 70 and gets a green is doing some really good stuff. And as we mentioned, it's hard to score 100. If you get a 70, you're probably operating at a high level. Can you improve a little? Probably, but you're doing most things right, and that's what we're going to look at today. So let's look at this report and see how it's broken down, because as you can see, this is not about CEUs and one-to-ones and things like that. There are different set of metrics here to look at your chapter as a whole. So it starts with chapter size. And people ask, well, what does that mean and how is it ranked? And so basically with chapter size, we always say that, what's the ideal chapter size? Usually 40 members is the number that comes up the most. But to get a perfect score, your chapter needs at least 30 members, right? That is a very doable thing. So you'll get 15 points for that. I know that the member traffic lights are scored on 20s because it's only 5 categories. These are 15 each, and one of these categories only gets you 10 points to get to a perfect score. So chapter size of these 4 chapters, as you can see, is all over 30. So that's an easy 15 points right there. Let's look at member growth. And notice it says 6 months. Most of the categories here are about 6 months, except for conversion. So in the past 6 months, your chapter added 9 members. That's a lot. So talk about that if you could.
Absolutely. So when we first took over as the leadership team, one of the first things we did was organize a big Visitors Day. And so Visitors Day, obviously, they're really good events. I think most chapters do them. And there were a few things, there are a few kind of like stimulants and reward systems that we did to make sure that we actually got a lot of visitors. And so one of the things that we implemented was a contest. So the winner, I think the winner of the contest, I don't remember if they got like $150 or something like that. And so that was one of the things. There were other like little rewards. You know, we started off with a lot of recognition. Moving up to the Visitors Day, like the people who have always been really good visitors, we started adding in like ed moments. So the educational moment part of the chapter, we focused on visitors quite a bit. And so right at the beginning of our term, we had a Visitors Day that brought in 20 people in one day. And then I think we converted 3 people from that one Visitors Day. So that was a nice big surge immediately. That gave us a lot of confidence right out of the gate. And then we kind of just kept honing visitors. Like one of our biggest goals this year was definitely growth, because we knew that with COVID, we were going to have some attrition. And so we needed to grow to kind of make up for that. And then I would say like 6 months, 7 months into the year, we started kind of realizing that we needed to really focus on retention, because I think just naturally being being virtual, it's harder for people to maintain those connections and more importantly, like keep a deep connection. And so that's kind of when we started saying, okay, let's stop focusing on growth. We hit 39 members, we hit 40 at one point actually. And I think right now we're technically at 38 because we just lost a couple, but we said, okay, let's stop focusing on growth because we hit our goal. We're at 39. We're going to stay here. We're pretty solid, but we need to also start focusing on retention as well and making sure that we schedule events and things like that. And so, but yeah, in terms of growth, the Visitors Day, and then really just focusing with like the ed moments on visitors and rewarding people for when they did bring visitors. Those were a few ways we kind of affected the culture.
Great. Yeah, that's excellent. And so you talked about retention. And so your retention percentage is 80, which is, again, crazy high. It's excellent because, as you know, we have no control over whether members come and go. We have a little, we have influence on them depending on how the chapter is running itself, right? But people retire, they move, they change jobs. And so people come and go, even in the most high performing chapters. And so to have an 80% retention rate is something that any director would dream about for their chapters, because they know that typically when members stay, they're making money, right? And so the chapter's functioning well. So, and that goes for the 3 other chapters here as well. I see Scott from Business Bulldogs is here. And, this is a chapter that's also hovering around that number, 43 members, right? And they're doing great. And we're going to talk a little bit about them when we get to conversion rate in just a second. But let's look at referrals next. All right. So in the end, most members will say, if I'm getting referrals, I'm going to renew. So that's tied to retention, of course, right? But it's another thing. If I'm making money and I am passing referrals and I'm receiving referrals, I'm also going to be really comfortable inviting visitors, right? I know I've spoken to chapters that are struggling. They're like, I don't know that I'm comfortable inviting visitors because my chapter is struggling. And I feel for those members, but I think, to them, do it anyway. Bring them in. Maybe that'll, help turn the tide a little bit. So when we look at referrals, 1.15 means that everyone in the chapter is doing that 1 referral per week, which is not something you see all the time. And you're actually doing a little bit above that. And the other chapters, as you see, are very close to averaging that number. And that's why they're performing at such a high number. If you can get into that, I know there is a region in Florida that does power of 2, by the way. Their numbers are off the charts, but they double up on everything. So that's their own thing that they do. I don't know if anyone can throw into the chat, if you're in one of those chapters, but it really is kind of an impressive thing that they do. Let's see, let's check the chat right now. We have any power of 2 people in, I think it's West Central Florida. Not on today. Okay. Oh, there we go. West Coast, right? They do power of 2. So whatever you want to do, wherever your chapter is, if you see, I wouldn't attempt power of 2 unless you've mastered power of 1. So maybe these 4 chapters could take a shot at that if they wanted to. But really, your chapter is functioning just fine as is right now. You're making money, and that's what matters, right? Okay. So we talked about referrals. We talked about, let's look at visitors next. So visitors are coming in at a good rate here. If we're asking for, everyone to have a regular, 1 visitor per month, members here are working hard to hit that number and bringing in people on a regular basis. As you said, Torrey, you do it through like a big event. Some chapters just have little stack days here and there. However you do it, doesn't matter as long as you're getting new faces in. That is a huge difference maker in chapters. And do you think, I don't know if you've seen it, if you've gone, Torrey, over time where there hadn't been some visitors and then a new member comes in and it just kind of livens up the group?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, getting a new members is always really exciting. That's always a confidence booster. It always gets the chapter, rowdy on that day and excited and clapping. And so that's always a big celebration. And I think adding kind of just a slow trickle throughout the year, we added at least, a visitor a month. And I think that was a nice kind of stimulant and a boost to the chapter's energy and confidence. And then in terms of, I guess that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. It does make a difference. And so now we'll talk about conversion rate.
Mm-hmm.
Conversion rate is the conversion of visitors who become members. And so you see your number is very high, 26. So 1 in 4 members, pretty much. 1 in 4 visitors becomes a member. That's high. Let's look at our friends, the Bulldogs. Their conversion rate is 42%, which means almost half of their visitors become members. Now, if we back up a little bit, you'll see that, Torrey, your chapter has a higher percentage of, higher number of visitors that comes in. They may be a little bit more picky about who they bring in, but the ones that are coming in are converting to members. And I know every chapter is a little bit different. Here's one other thing that I know. If you look at your chapter traffic lights, sometimes the numbers are insane. They just don't make any sense. And it's because your visitor host may not be entering visitors, right? And so your conversion rate is like, 1,000% because everyone who applies comes in because they're not listed as visitors. So make sure that that number gets under control. And you'll know that just by looking at, run your past visitor reports and see if people are entering visitors. So important.
Yeah, and I do have something to add about this. One, I need to talk to somebody in the Business Bulldogs because whatever you guys are doing to convert those visitors into members, that's amazing. I got to talk to your closer to get some tips because I think when the next leadership team takes over, I'm actually thinking of becoming the closer, just because I really like that stuff. I like sales. I like talking to people, and so I'll have fun, talking to visitors and hopefully getting them to join the chapter and just educating them. But yeah, I need to talk to somebody in your guys' chapter, so I'll reach out soon. But anyways, with the whole the metric situation, so one of the things that we did, and I have to give this to our VP, Allison Herbert. She was really how do I say this? She took responsibility of making sure that the visitors were logged correctly. And she was really particular about it, almost to a point where I was like, okay, relax. But it was good because we actually set a whole new role for somebody to go into, and this is a part of the visitor host team, for somebody to go into BNI Connect, or I don't know if it's not BNI Connect, but the BNI website. Business Builder, to go into BNI Business Builder and make sure that the visitors were logged correctly, because we didn't log, like there's certain requirements for it to be an actual visitor. Like it can only be visitors, and this is for our chapter, I don't know if every chapter does this, but they're only supposed to come twice, right? And then also, so there's that, and then it doesn't count as a visitor if it's just somebody's sub for that day. Like if they're a sub, but they wouldn't really have a chance of joining the chapter. And then also they don't count as a visitor if they're coming and their spot is already filled. So those requirements were all met. So we were particular about the visitors. That was one thing. And then I think that's also why the conversion rate is good, is because we didn't allow our visitor rate to like inflate with having kind of like mucking it up kind of. And so that's why the conversion rate is also good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Scott says that their conversion rate is high because, looks like their seat value is 70,000. And that's very high. And, that's an easy sell to people who are visiting, so that's great. Now let's.
I've actually never heard that term before. Seat value. Is that like the value?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
how much thank you for
average
closed business? You
Yeah.
might. Yeah, that makes sense. I've never used that term before.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'm careful about throwing out that number to everybody because sometimes, someone's got a very small business and they're probably not going to make $7,000, but they'll probably make a lot more than they would in another chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now let's jump over to absenteeism. And if you're wondering what those numbers mean, that is a percentage of absences. So each of these 4 chapters, and you got to shout out to the Kent networkers there, that is a percentage of 2.24% absenteeism in a chapter that's over 30. So pretty much everybody's there every week. Anything under 5%, by the way, will get you that perfect score, those 15 points on your score. And someone asked about the scores don't match up, and we're going to get to that in just a second. So we can do that. Sarah's asking about seat value. So what you can do, Sarah, is find out from running a PALMS report for your chapter, or ask your VP to run that to find out what the total revenue is, and just divide that by the number of members, and that's the average seat value. Right? Okay, so let's go to this next slide here. So this is, I was explaining to Torrey earlier, I am not a math person. This gets very confusing to me. I prefer the other charts, but this is kind of the breakdown of things. And I wanted to mention a couple things. First, when you look at each of these things, they're all worth 15 points, except for conversion, which you'll see only goes to 10 points. And that is how we get an even 100 score. But if you'll notice, I put by retention an asterisk there. And that asterisk is there because if you are a brand new chapter in your first year, you will get a 0 until you're more than a year old, because you have no retention. Because the retention looks at, well, let me back up. Everything on here is a 6-month window, except for retention, which is a year. And so we have to see who joined and then who stays after they join. And that's how we figure out the retention number. So if you are in a brand new chapter, less than a year old, then your retention number for a perfect score for you is 90. If you can get a 90, you're doing everything perfectly, right? So don't worry about not having 100. That is impossible to get in year 1. Okay. And by the way, that green box around less than 10% was a screenshot that someone else took, so I don't know why that's there. But these are the way, this is how things are broken out. And you'll see that the best way to improve your chapter is start with attendance, I think. Try to invite to get to 30 members, so that all the contact spheres have members in them and they all have the ability to give and receive referrals. I think that's one of the biggest problems with retention is people leave because they're in a contact sphere and there's only 1 or 2 people in it. Okay, so I'm going to now jump over here and let's take a little poll. I'm curious, now that you've seen all the parts, all the metrics that we look at, which is the one that you want to work on the most? So let me launch this poll. So I move some windows out of the way. There we go. Okay, what is the one area your chapter needs to improve the most? Is it getting to 30? Is it growing and adding more members? Just kind of combined those two, although you may be over 30 and still need to add members. Is it member retention? You know, you're keeping all the members that you've got. Is it referrals? Is it visitors? Is it your conversion rate? Or is it your attendance? These are the things that we look at. And collectively, they make up where you want to be, you know. And so, Torrey, that your chapter is, you know, functioning on all high levels on all of these categories is really impressive. How old is your chapter?
Oof, I think it's at least 13, 14 years old. Yeah.
No, I mean, it is hard out of the gate to be able to do this, right? So it takes some time, and don't look at it like, oh my gosh, we only scored like a yellow 50 or something like that. Just say, all right, here's where we are now. What can we do to improve? You know, and I like the way that you mentioned going from leadership team to leadership team to say, here's where we are. Here's how we ended the term. What new things can we implement, or what one or two things can we focus on to be better? All right, I'm going to end poll and share the results. And all right, so this was interesting. So the majority of members say they want to get their chapter over 30 members. That is great to hear. So I think you can see it's pretty simple, right? More members means more money and more referrals, more referral opportunities. So that's an important one. And then visitors. So this is something that I don't know if anyone wants to put into the chat what they're doing to bring in visitors this summer. You know, I think sometimes people think, oh, it's the summer, we're just going to lay back and not be too busy inviting. But there's always opportunity to invite. Sarah's saying more visitors leads to new members. They go hand in hand. Yeah, absolutely. Patricia's doing outdoor social events, which is great. Lisa had her visitors day in April. That's great. All those things are small things that you can do to introduce people to BNI and let the meeting sell itself, right? Okay. So talking about getting to that point, I want to talk about culture versus strategy, right? And the reason why I want to talk about that is you may have the best ideas on what to do and how to do it, but if the culture is not there, it's probably not going to happen, right? Torrey, talk about culture in your chapter.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I would say that we were aware from the very beginning that if we wanted to make change, that we would have to kind of affect the base culture. And so, and not only culture, but also energy. I guess I could talk about that in strategy. But you know, when I took over, we already had a pretty solid culture, I would say. We, like you said, Steve, we've been around for a long time. And Debbie Ruiz just dropped in the chat. We've actually been around since 2001. So 20 years now, which is awesome. And so I think a part of our culture just naturally is we have a lot of charisma. I really love our chapter, and this is not at all to talk bad about other chapters, but we have energy. And I've visited other chapters, and we get this feedback a lot. We have a lot of energy, and I think keeping that energy, keeping it exciting during meetings is really important because, you know, we're all business owners. We all could be doing 100 other things during that, you know, hour and a half long meeting every single week. But it's important to keep people excited about coming back. And I think that's a part of having good attendance. And even, you know, and just keeping people enthusiastic about staying in. And so having that energy was really important to us. One of the ways that I affected that personally was there were a lot of slides that could use some improvement. They were just they'd been used since I was there from the very beginning. Some of them were never changed. Most of them were never changed unless we got new slides from like BNI Global. And so I started kind of just making my own slides. I am a designer, by trade. And so I just started, making some interesting slides to add in. And that always got the chapter really excited. I remember every time I would make a slide and then that next chapter meeting, I would see in the chat, everyone was like, ooh, super cool slide. Awesome. This is fun. And so that was kind of one of the stimulants. Another way that we affected the energy of the chapter was we did we started a 30-second commercial contest. And so this is another slide that I created. And I kind of, whenever it gets time, so this is after all of the members have done their weekly commercials, their 30-second commercials, we get to the end of that, and I kind of turn into a game show host, and I'm like, and now it is time for the 30-second commercial contest. How do you win the contest? You put the 3 C's into your commercial: creativity, charisma, and or comedy. And then I introduced the person that had won the last week, and the person that won the last week gets to pick this week's winner. And so it's kind of a fun time in the chapter, and then when we started doing that contest, people started bringing in jokes and songs and just getting creative with their commercials. And so that's really affected culture and energy. And one of the ways that we kind of gamify the chapters, we try and give monetary rewards. So the 4 or 5 members that won the weekly 30-second commercial contest, the secretary treasurer does, pulls at random out of a hat all of their names, and whoever she picks gets a $50 gift card to a local business. And so, yeah, that's just a fun addition. And I think keeping it light and fun is really important. And so that's why you also have to be aware, if you are president, it is your job to keep that energy and to make sure, when you start the meeting that day, you got to make it fun, and you have to make it interesting. You have to add those kind of stimulants in. And one of the ways also that I start the meeting is we do open networking even virtually. We just add everyone into breakout rooms. And I start with music. As everyone is pouring in, there's music. I'll be playing I'll be playing funk. I'll be playing funkadelic. And I'm a big funk lover. And so yeah, a little Parma, exactly. And so that's the way that we start the meeting. And so as soon as people get in, it's like, oh, okay, I can relax, and this is a fun part of my Thursday. So those are a few ways that we affect culture.
I think that's great. And one of the things that I know is if the meeting is exciting and visitors like it, they're more likely to apply. The other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of culture is buy-in. I've seen chapters that said, all right, let's have a visitors day. And people are like, do we have to? Whereas, chapters that have a great culture say, all right, let's do it because they understand the why behind it. It's not something that we're doing arbitrarily. We're doing it because it should happen, because we need to bring in new people, fill out contact spheres, replace anyone who's left. So very important. And then with strategy, that's another important thing. And that is, all right, we've got the culture now. Now let's lay out the roadmap to success. Right. I wanted to point out something. Charlie Nunez, who is a wonderful person, said it occurred to him that it may not be an either or, culture versus strategy, but could be both an and. And I agree, and that is why, there you go. Culture and strategy together, right? I think this is the way that we need to think. Yeah, let's establish that we've got a great meeting and members who enjoy doing what they do and are willing to help out, right? And then put together a great strategy. So I think that's a better way to look at it rather than just cultural strategy. Good observation, Charlie. Okay. So
I'd like to add one other thing into the culture. Yeah. I don't know if there's going to be another opportunity to share about this. One of the things that we created was a book club. So we have a Seattle Professionals Book Club, and we utilize this app called Book Clubs. Let me see if I can pull it up here. It's a iOS app called Book Clubs. I don't know if it's going to show. And we had another role added to the chapter. It's just the book club organizer. And right now we're reading a book by Malcolm Gladwell. And so that changes out every single month. And usually there's at least 8 or 9 members that show up to the book club meetings. And we read a book, we show up to the meeting at the end of the month and talk about it. And so that's another way that we affect culture with strategy. But yeah, I just wanted to add that in real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent idea. I love that. And getting members excited about the chapter and the things that it offers outside of the typical meeting is
Exactly.
really what makes a big difference. People want to be part of something that really carries through their week, right?
Mhm.
It's not, you're not just 90-minute members, as they say, right? Okay, so let's jump into now Q&A. So let's see what we've got here. May I report my continuing legal education credits through non-BNI sources? It's hard for me to take continuing education through BNI when my license requires me to take 45 hours every 3 years of continuing legal education. Okay, so let's talk about CEUs. So outside of BNI, CEU stands for Continuing Education Unit. But within BNI, it is Chapter Education Unit. This is networking information. And so while it is great that you're doing your regular continuing education for your profession, we do want you to do some, for example, being on this webinar gets you a CEU. Here you go, right? For you to bring back to your chapter ideas or for you to do better in your membership. So that's the answer to that question. I know we get that a lot. Stephen Thompson is asking you, Torrey, which 3 members meet on Wednesday before your Thursday meeting?
So that's the leadership team. So secretary, treasurer, VP, and myself, the president.
Right. And I think that's a good practice for all members. Let's see. Sue says, can you get the power of one on the phone app? Hopefully, eventually. So don't believe that is an option at this time.
And I wanted to add on to that last question. We don't.
Yep.
We haven't continued to do that Wednesday meeting throughout the year. It was just something that we started the year with, just to kind of gain that momentum. And now we've taken it down to once a month. We do that Wednesday meeting, just to kind of check in with each other. But yeah, go ahead.
So Debbie's asking, do you think the new visitor registration system will help with conversion rate? Yeah, definitely. Anything that we can do to improve the way that we are registering visitors will be great. And that's something you can look forward to. I think this weekend, BNI Connect is going to be down tomorrow or Sunday, probably tomorrow. And when it comes up, we'll see a new visitor registration system. So.
Oh, cool. I haven't heard of that yet. That's fun.
Yeah. Mark is asking, says you can't stay at 39 and maintain a perfect score. You have to show +5 every month for the 6-month period. Yes, you do have to show continued growth. You're correct. And you may, if you top out at a certain number, you may dip again, and that's okay. That happens, Let's see, Yukita says, can we have this presentation in our email? If you email me, I will send you this presentation. So there's that one. All right, let's see. So Sarah says, and Torrey, I don't know if you've heard anything like this. She was just on a round table. They were told to have subs register as visitors so that they would get the waiver form as we are doing hybrid meetings. Any input on that?
So yeah, you can still register someone as a visitor, like in the BNI Connect app, but then afterwards, what I was mentioning was in BNI Business Builder, you can have somebody, you can either do it yourself. I think anybody in the chapter can do it, but we have someone on our visitor host team do this. They go into BNI Business Builder and they go to the list of visitors. And then after they have already visited, they mark them as being a true visitor, or I don't remember exactly how they do it.
I think actually, I think that's in BNI Connect, and I think the vice president has that option.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, but that is a good point. All right, next. What is working best for people continuing to bring the positive culture in hybrid versions of meetings? So anyone's doing any kind of a hybrid, put that in the chat.
That is a good question. When I heard about hybrid meetings, I was very against it. That sounds like a pain in the butt, and I'm not going to try that. It's either virtual or in person for us.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's a little bit different, and chapters all
Yeah.
run a little bit differently. In the end, we just want people to have success.
Yeah.
And so hopefully whatever works for you in your chapter will
I
be
think
great.
I think especially if you have someone in the chapter that is very tech oriented and can figure out a very creative way to make sure that it runs well. I think it's an awesome idea. I just think that it will take quite a bit of resources and planning.
Mhm. Let's see, is there a PDF of the chapter traffic light scoring? There is. Here's the simplest way to do it. Go to Google and type in BNI chapter traffic lights. I think the first option that's going to pop up is going to be an article within BNI Connect from Jeremy Walsh, which will have a breakdown.